they don't have the conceptual clarity ki what is the purpose of studying polity. Why do we need a subject called polity? If I just ask what the word polity mean, people fail to provide any reasonable definition of the subject which they claim that they know. Just because you are familiar with a term does not mean you have conceptual clarity of that term. These terms basically give us this illusion that these are very simple terms, but they are not. Article 200 basically was inserted in the constitution then in 1950 only, and so far there has been not a single change in the text of Article 200. But we get to see, like in past 1 year, we saw 3 interpretation of Article 200, the text of Article 200. Hello everyone, my name is Himanshu Kishore, and today I am here to discuss about polity, particularly from the prelims examination point of view. In prelims examination, as we know that there is only one GS, one paper for all the subject of general studies. In GS paper 1, the UPSC asks everything like the polity, the economy, the art and culture, history, science and tech, everything is asked in that one single paper. And there in 100 questions, they basically try to check our knowledge with respect to all the general study subject. Now there, polity basically enjoy this most status of most dependable subject, which means that if people have limited time and they need to give X amount of time to 2 subjects, often they prefer polity over other subject, because there is this notion that if we give X number of hours to polity, the rate of return or the return that we'll be getting will be much more, surety will be there, and it will be higher than if we give that amount of energy and effort in other subject. All right. Now, why this is basically there? Why this status of most dependable subject? Basically, it is there because of 2 reasons. One, the concept which are there in polity, the concept that we study, the terminology that we get to see there, terms like democracy, politics, freedom, rights, fundamental rights, all these terms most of us are already familiar even before we start preparation for this particular examination. Even before we know ever like what there is a subject called polity and what polity mean, but we have some familiarity about these terms and concept. And along with that sense of familiarity about the subject, we also have very good standard sources like NCERT books are there. Lakshmikant is a very popular book, and along with that there is this fact that on an average, like in past 15 years, UPSC has asked 16 to 17 questions, and in certain years they have asked even 20, 22, 25 questions from polity. Now you basically, in order to clear the prelims examination, any student simply need 50 questions. If they are able to have 50 questions correct, then their selection is for sure. Now, if 17, 18 or 20 questions you are able to get only from one subject, that is a very big deal. Hence, polity basically has enjoyed this status. But the reality in past few years is no longer the same. I mean, the notion is still out there, but it is far from the reality. Because the kind of question that UPSC is asking in polity, the nature of those questions, the complexity of those questions, and the style of UPSC to talk about a particular concept has changed remarkably. Earlier, UPSC used to ask, okay, tell us what are the provisions with respect to local government, what are the powers of a particular office. UPSC simply used to ask these concepts like what is out there. But now UPSC is going rather a layer below. UPSC is asking why it is there and what are the implications, what are the limits of the power of a particular office. They are no longer interested in the power of the governor. They are more interested under what circumstances this power cannot be exercised. What is the latest judicial interpretation of this power? So basically UPSC has changed their style of asking the question. But when it comes to preparation, the style of preparation for most of the students is still the same. They have this understanding, or they have this notion that if they just need to rote memorize, they just need to basically imbibe everything which is there in Lakshmikant. And they think that just because they have every knowledge which is there in that book, they'll be able to solve all the question. Sadly, that is no longer the reality. I meet many students in my class and I basically ask them like what, and I meet them once they have gone through the Lakshmikant, once they have covered the entire polity, and they fail to define the term polity. They just, if I ask them like what is polity, what do we study in polity, and they fail to answer anything. They just say some random thing, sir, we read about democracy, we read about government, but they don't have the conceptual clarity ki what is the purpose of studying polity. Why do we need a subject called polity? They don't have that clarity. And if we look at the questions that UPSC is asking, particularly in past few years, the trend is very clear that UPSC is asking very conceptual driven question. Like look at this. We all know that the terms law and liberty. Law is something we all have this confidence, we know it. At the same time, liberty is also a concept that we think that we know, like liberty is what? Freedom, right? But when UPSC asked this question few years back, which one of the following reflect the most appropriate relationship between law and liberty? Basically, they are not asking what is law, what is liberty. They are asking how do you define the relationship between the two? Now, when I have no intention to basically demean any source, and particularly a book Lakshmikant. It's a very popular book. It is a good book, but sadly, that book also does not, or maybe it is not possible for the author to get into the detail of all these fundamental concepts of political science, not just polity. So people fail to basically mark a correct answer in this question. Why? Because they don't have clarity of the concept of law, concept of liberty. The correct answer is basically the second one. But if you look at the answer, if there are no law, there is no liberty. People tend to believe that if there are laws, then liberty will be curtailed. Because laws are what? Laws are in a way restriction by the state over our behavior. So people tend to assume that more number of laws are there, less amount of liberty will be available. This is a very mechanical approach because laws are there basically which restrict us from doing certain thing. And liberty means that we should have freedom. There should not be any restraint. And that's why the answer, like this particular statement, does not make or does not pass the test of common sense, that common understanding people tend to carry about the term law and liberty. Likewise, when I ask people, like, what do you understand by the concept of democracy? Then very often people give me this definition that Abraham Lincoln basically gave, that democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But if you ask them what this of, by, and for mean, why we do not have to the people, with the people, from the people, there can be so many other connecting words also. If Abraham Lincoln basically used of, by, and for, there must be a reason for it, or there must be a message associated with these terms. But whenever I get to meet the student, particularly during these revision classes, during this, just before the exam, this marathon classes, I get to see that people do not have clarity about these concepts. The true meaning is of is that of means that people are the source of political power. The government is nothing but representative of people. By means popular participation, means in government it is the people who are participating, and the government is of the people, and people get to participate in various aspects of the government and the governance. And as well as the last term, for means collective welfare should be the objective. This government is not working for one group of individual, one family, or one class, or one religion, or one any sort of categorization. Rather, government is for everyone. Now, this clarity of these terms of, for, and by is often missing whenever I get to interact with these students. As well as, if I just ask what the word polity mean, people fail to provide any reasonable definition of the subject which they claim that they know. Just because you are familiar with a term does not mean you have conceptual clarity of that term. This is a very important point to notice, because liberty, freedom, as I said in the beginning, that these terms basically give us this illusion that these are very simple terms, but they are not. And very often people tend to basically rote memorize the definition, and that's why they basically stuck with the fundamentals. Now, polity basically is nothing but a legal political framework to distribute political power in a society. Legal political framework to distribute political power in a society with a purpose, and the purpose is collective welfare and productivity of the entire society along with the individual. Now, this is not a very a definition which you will find in a very standard book, or you will find one thinker basically gave us this definition. And that's the beauty of humanity. In humanity, if you have conceptual clarity, you can always come up with your own expression to define a concept. In humanity, it is different from science. In science, for gravity, for potential, for any concept, we have a very well crafted, very well designed definition, which is not that easy to basically change. But when it comes to humanity, if you have the conceptual clarity, there are, the whole idea of multiple school of thought for one particular concept is this only, that people tend to see one idea from different perspective. And this is my perspective I am giving you, and it makes a lot of sense. But you can say something like this only when you have clarity of the subject. So this is polity. Now, let me show you one more thing. There is a question which UPSC asked a few years back, which is this. This question is, which one of the following is in Indian polity is an essential feature that indicate that Indian polity is a federal in character? Now, federalism is something most of the, any student who has ever studied Lakshmikant, I don't think they'll be having any confusion with respect to the concept of federalism. But if you look at, the question is that which of these features basically convey that Indian polity is a federal polity. Now you look at this independence of judiciary, and we say that although in Indian Constitution the word federalism is not mentioned, but there are numerous features which provide us this clarity that Indian polity is a federal polity. Now if you look at this, the independence of judiciary is a very famous feature of Indian Constitution which convey that we have the federal polity. At the same time, if you look at this one, the union legislature has elected representative from constituent units. Now, constituent units means state, and union legislature means parliament. So basically, this option is saying that in parliament, we have Rajya Sabha. In parliament, we have this bicameral system. And it is saying that because of this feature, we can say that in Indian polity, we have federalism. Now, both of them actually are correct. In Lakshmikant and in all the standard books, you will read this only, that there are certain features, we call them federal feature, and because of those federal feature, we say that Indian polity is a federal polity. And prima facie, there are two answers, two options, but we need to pick one. बाकी इसमें जो बाकी की दो ऑप्शन है कि यूनियन कैबिनेट कैन हैव इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव फ्रॉम रीजनल पार्टीज, ये तो इट डज नॉट मेक सेंस. द फंडामेंटल राइट्स आर एनफोर्सेबल बाय कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ, इट ऑल्सो डज नॉट मेक मच सेंस when it comes to federalism. But these two are very close, and UPSC recently asked this one, and it was not very easy. If you have only read the concept of federalism in a very superficial manner, ki federalism means there is a distribution of power Federalism means there should be these features. You will never be able to mark answer to this question. You need to understand the answer of this question is A part. But why? Reason is that when we say federalism means these 3, 4, 5 features, then which one? The question says essential feature. And in objective question, you have to basically go for the best option. So you need to figure out what is the most essential feature. Now in the option you have 2 essential feature and you need to figure out which one is the most essential feature. You can get into this level of reasoning only when you have clarity of federalism. And clarity of federalism means that federalism, basically the concept means that there should be 2 or more than 2 polities or government in a particular country, sovereign entity. So in India, we have central government. In India, we have state government. Now, just because we have 2 government, of course, it means we are federal. But look at that. Which one ensure that there will be 2? If we just go for this, ki parliament is having Rajya Sabha, yes, Rajya Sabha means that it is a federal polity. But bicameralism is not that essential feature of federal polity. Look at United Kingdom. In United Kingdom, they have House of Lords. In United Kingdom also they have 2 houses, but there they do not have a federal polity. Rather, it is a unitary one, right? So basically, even if tomorrow we abolish our Rajya Sabha, it will not abolish the 2 governments or 2 tier of government. But if we are to lose the independence of judiciary, then Parliament get to decide what is there in Constitution. Parliament under Article 368 can do anything with the Constitution. If we do not have this powerful independent judiciary, very likely Parliament will ensure that state are no longer there. Hence, this one is more important, most essential feature or requirement for a federal polity. अब ये आप तभी कर सकते हो जब आपने फेडरलिज्म के कॉन्सेप्ट की केवल डेफिनेशन नहीं देखी है, आपको उसके रीजन पता है कि व्हाई डू वी हैव फेडरलिज्म एंड व्हाट इज नेसेसरी टू एंश्योर द क्वालिटी ऑफ फेडरलिज्म एंड व्हाट सॉर्ट ऑफ फेडरलिज्म डू वी हैव. ऑलराइट, सो दिस इज जस्ट वन example to make you understand what exactly UPSC has been asking lately. And in the end, I will show you one more thing which is basically has been in news a lot. Just like 10 schedule is a topic in our polity. And there we come to know about this 10 schedule was added to the 10 schedule was added to the Constitution during 1985 through 52nd Constitution Amendment Act. And the purpose was that there has been so many defection cases, so 10th schedule is basically anti-defection law. Now, over a course of period, there has been tremendous amount of controversy, rather I will say that lack of clarity with respect to what is there in our anti-defection law. Let me tell you one thing. You see, in 52nd Constitution Amendment Act, basically in the 10th schedule, in para 6, there is a clear-cut expression that decision of presiding officer, means the speaker, is final with respect to defection cases. But in 1992, Quijotto-Holland case, basically judiciary said that judicial review is a mandatory feature of this 10th schedule. Now, judicial review means what? Judicial review means that Supreme Court said that whatever is the verdict of the presiding officer, although the constitutional texts say that the decision of officer is final, but Supreme Court says that it is not. It is subjected to judicial review. And what is the rationale? The rationale is that that office, that the speaker basically act like a quasi-judicial tribunal. And quasi-judicial tribunal means it is a judicial body. And with respect to all the judicial power, the Supreme Court is the ultimate judicial entity. Hence, they say that we can review the verdict or the decision taken by the officers. Uske baad, abhi lately, there has been further change in this anti-defection law. In this Kesham Megha Chandra case, basically the Manipur Legislative Assembly. So a case against the Speaker of Manipur Legislative Assembly in 2020, Supreme Court said that there is a 3-month deadline for the Speaker to take a call with respect to anti-defection cases. Because there have been multiple instances when the Speaker was not taking any decision. Likewise, recently, means last year, like in 2025, few months back in November, there was this case from Telangana. And in this, Supreme Court reaffirmed this deadline. Now, understand, this deadline is not there in the text, but Supreme Court basically said that this deadline is there because it is very important. And Supreme Court said that inactivity of a speaker is a fraud upon democracy. So this is an exact expression. You need to have certain familiarity with these expressions. You need to have the evolution of the Constitution and its text and the meaning of that text. All right. Article 200 has also been in news tremendously. Like last entire year, basically Article 200 dominated the current affairs of polity. Article 200 basically was inserted in the Constitution then in 1950 only, and so far there has been not a single change in the text of Article 200. But we get to see, like in past 1 year, we saw 3 interpretations of Article 200, the text of Article 200. And that is basically the things are changing at a very rapid pace. And that's why it is not feasible for any one book to get updated that quickly. And that's why I say that if you rely on any book, Lakshmikant is a good book, but you cannot completely rely only on one book. You need to basically have a look at the static part as well as the dynamic part, which is changing very rapidly. And the UPSC has also started looking at the static part in a different way. They are no longer asking, what is this concept? They are more interested in connection between two concepts. They are more interested in the limitation of a particular concept. Hence, I will say that the familiarity with a concept does not mean you have clarity of concept, as well as you need to basically follow the rapid evolution of the concepts of polity. In FTCP class, basically we will try exactly that. I will ensure that in those 18-20 classes of polity, you basically have the understanding of the core of polity, what exactly polity as a subject is all about, and from the examination point of view, what are these high yield zone, what are those areas from where UPSC is lately asking a lot of question, and we will of course discuss the PYQs, and with that, the attempt will be that you gain the clarity of concept and confidence with respect to polity for the upcoming prelims examination. All right, see you there. Wish you all the very best.